Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit more about the techniques to develop our right hand and our left hand dexterity. So the first thing I want to do is I want to play a sequence of 4 notes on each string, and we're going to use what we call alternating fingering. What that means is at all times we're going to alternate between the index and the middle finger, okay? Now there are some bass players out there who use 3 fingers, index, middle, and ring finger, but for now that's something you can try and experiment with, but for now I'm going to keep it just to these 2 fingers, okay? We're going to alternate between index and middle, and we're going to play it, as I said, a sequence of 4 notes. And what I want you to do is to not only pay attention to your right hand but also to your left hand. I want you to use your left hand as a device to mute the other strings. So as you're playing on the E string, I want you to rest. Notice how I'm resting my left hand. The left hand is muting these 3 strings. Okay, so you're going to play index, middle, index, middle, index, middle, right? Then when you jump over to the A string, we're going to float our thumb and we're going to rest it, and then we're going to move our left hand. So now the thumb is muting the E string, whereas the left hand is going to mute the D and the G string. That provides us with good control, all right? Okay, so that's what I want you guys to do. We're going to do 4 notes on each string. 1, 2. I know it's very rudimentary, but we're trying to develop our control not only with the right hand but also our muting technique with the left hand. Now, alternating at all times, index, middle, index, middle. One more time. Index, middle, index, middle, index, middle, index, middle, index, middle, index, middle. But then eventually we're going to keep raising the speed until we're able to play it at a much faster pace. Okay? Now notice, as I'm going back, I'm muting the strings that I'm not using with the left hand. Okay? So muting, ascending, muting, descending as well. Okay? Very important. Now, we're also going to do middle, index, okay? So middle, index, middle, index, middle, index. Okay? So that's something you also want to practice. Also as you go back. So middle, index, middle, index. Now, if you're absolute beginner, you might actually struggle, especially on the way back. So if you are struggling, then slower down your pace even more and do it slower until you play it right. You don't want to practice something where you're messing up, because then you're going to develop bad habits, and we don't want to develop bad habits, okay? So if you got to play it very slow, then do so by all means. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to develop your technique. Now, let's make it a little bit more interesting. The next thing we want to do is we want to play 3 notes per string. And you're going to notice that's when you're really going to have to pay attention to your right hand so that you stick solely to alternating. Because what tends to happen, I'll show you. So we're going to play 3 notes per string. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? But you have to keep alternating at all times. So index, middle, index. But then when you go over to the next string, some of you are going to want to start with the index again. But that's incorrect, because you just used the index and now the middle finger is free. So index, middle, index. But don't do index again, do middle, okay? Force yourself to alternate, okay? So okay? But also do it starting with the middle finger. All right, we did it with index, middle, index, middle. Now we're going to do middle, index, middle, okay? Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the one finger per fret. This is a rule that says no matter the position that you're in, one finger will control all the frets. It doesn't matter which string I play, the index finger will play all of these strings, whereas frets, whereas the middle finger will play all of these frets, so on and so forth. Now, I have no problem with that, but the problem is when you're playing up here, especially as a beginner, where your hand is not as flexible yet. So if you try to practice, some of you will get those crab-looking fingers and you're going to struggle. You might have to stretch too much, and maybe your hand is not ready yet. So don't do it, especially if you're a beginner. Instead, if you are going to practice one finger per fret, at least practice it starting on the 5th fret and above, not up here, because you still don't have the flexibility. So in this case, I wouldn't mind if you were to do 1, 2, 3 and end with your pinky, okay? Because maybe this might be uncomfortable for you. There's nothing wrong if you do 1, 2, and then 4, 1, 2, and then 4. And by 4, I mean the pinky.